If you walked into Hanguk Tech on a foggy Monday morning, you'd probably miss the quiet man mopping the marble floors. Most employees did. They brushed past him, muttering complaints or dropping trash without a second glance. What they didn't know, what would soon shock an entire nation, was that the janitor they mocked, insulted, and ignored for weeks wasn't a janitor at all. He was the new CEO, placed undercover to observe the company's darkest habits. And the truth he uncovered would change everything. His name was Kang Do-hyun, 42 years old, a man known in the business world for rebuilding failing companies with calm intelligence and unpredictable strategies. But when the board of Hanguk Tech asked him to take over, he didn't accept immediately. Instead, he asked for 2 quiet weeks to walk the halls anonymously. Ever since he was a teenager sweeping floors at a small grocery store to support his family, he believed that how people treat those with no power reveals their true character. This undercover idea wasn't revenge, it was insight. The board reluctantly agreed, though they warned him Hanguk Tech was fragile. Morale was low, turnover high, and several scandals had damaged trust. But Do-hyun didn't want filtered reports or flattering presentations. He wanted raw, unpolished truth. And the best way to find it was to stand where no one looked, behind a mop, beside trash bins, in dusty storage rooms where gossip flowed more freely than professionalism. So on his first morning disguised in gray overalls, he stepped into the lobby unnoticed, carrying a bucket, ready to learn. From the beginning, it didn't take long to see the company's problems. Some employees refused to make eye contact. Others deliberately stepped around him as if he were invisible. A few dropped wrappers on the ground moments after he had cleaned an area just to see if he'd react. But 3 individuals stood out because their treatment wasn't just rude. It was cruel. They were part of the marketing team. Min-seok, the self-proclaimed office star, Hannah, known for gossip delivered with a smiling face, and Jae-ho, always trying to impress higher-ups. Together, they formed a trio infamous for backhanded comments and selective kindness. To supervisors, they were charming, ambitious, composed. But to interns, temps, and janitors, they were dismissive, sarcastic, and sometimes openly mean. On Do-hyun's 3rd day, as he quietly cleaned a hallway, he overheard them laughing about him, calling him a juicy mop boy, and wondering whether he even graduated high school. He stayed silent, noting their behavior, observing how others responded. Most simply avoided conflict. A few looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Some even laughed along. But one person noticed everything. Soo-mi, a soft-spoken administrative assistant who always greeted him with warmth. She was the only employee who bowed properly every morning, sometimes leaving packaged snacks beside his cleaning cart. "You work hard," she'd whisper before rushing off to her desk. She didn't know who he was. She didn't expect anything in return. Her kindness wasn't selective. She treated everyone, intern or executive, with the same gentleness. And though she didn't realize it, that meant more to Do-hyun than any flattering business report ever could. His interactions with her reminded him of his mother, who had worked as a hospital cleaner for decades. She used to come home with aching arms and quiet tears after being scolded by doctors who barely acknowledged her existence. Her resilience, dignity, and humility shaped his leadership philosophy: never assume someone's worth by their uniform. As he continued watching The Office, he started noticing patterns: who treated him like background noise, who acknowledged him with a nod, and who seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the bullying culture spreading like mold through the halls. By the end of week 1, Do-hyun had a full mental map of the real Hanguk Tech. The corporate brochure spoke of innovation, teamwork, and respect. But the lived reality was cliques, whispered complaints, and a tired workforce navigating silent hostility. He documented everything quietly, no dramatic confrontations, no emotional reactions. He was here to understand, not to punish. But things shifted on the morning of day 9, when an incident would test his patience far more than rude comments ever could. He was mopping the break room when Min-seok barged in carrying a cup of iced coffee. Behind him trailed Hannah and Jae-ho, already laughing about something that would probably be cruel. Hannah spotted him first and smirked. "Ah, Juicy, you missed a spot," she said, pointing at the clean floor. Before he could respond, Min-seok accidentally bumped his elbow, tipping the entire cup of iced coffee onto the freshly mopped tiles. "Oops," he said sarcastically. "Better clean that before someone important slips." The three burst into laughter. Do-hyun simply stared at the mess. His heartbeat stayed calm, but subtly, something in his expression changed. He knelt, cleaned the spill silently, and went back to work. But the moment didn't go unnoticed. Soo-mi had been microwaving her lunch nearby. Her face turned red with anger. She approached the trio, voice trembling but firm. "Why are you always like this? He's just doing his job." The room fell silent. The trio looked stunned. No one ever challenged them. But their embarrassment quickly hardened into defensiveness. "Relax, Soo-mi," Hannah hissed. "We're just joking." "You're not joking," Soo-mi replied. "You're being cruel." That simple sentence struck harder than anything Do-hyun expected. Not because of her defense, but because it revealed more truth than data ever could. When Hannah stormed out and Min-seok rolled his eyes, Do-hyun knew something. Kindness in hostile environments is rarer and more valuable than talent. And he had seen enough. It was time. The undercover observation phase was ending. The employees of Hanguk Tech were about to learn who he truly was. The next morning, a company-wide email went out. Mandatory all-staff town hall meeting. CEO introduction. The office buzzed with speculation. They had been without a permanent CEO for months after the previous one resigned following internal scandals. Most employees assumed today's meeting would be another corporate speech from someone detached from their daily struggles. Meanwhile, in a small storage room, Do-hyun quietly folded his janitor uniform and placed it neatly beside the cleaning cart. For a moment, he rested his hand on the fabric, remembering every insult, every kindness, every revelation. He walked to the restroom and changed into a tailored navy suit, one that fit him with quiet authority. No flashy watch, no unnecessary accessories, just someone who looked exactly like the leader Hanguk Tech desperately needed. When he stepped into the main hallway, employees glanced at him curiously, not recognizing the janitor. He walked calmly toward the elevator, leaving behind the mop, the cart, and the identity that had shown him the company's true heart. In 20 minutes, everyone would understand. The assembly hall filled quickly. Employees whispered, checking their phones, gossiping. Min-seok wondered aloud if the new CEO would be some old guy from another conglomerate. Hannah rehearsed her sweetest fake smile. Jae-ho straightened his tie repeatedly. Meanwhile, Soo-mi sat quietly near the back, sensing something unusual in the atmosphere. When the board members entered, the room hushed. The chairman stepped forward and cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. Today we introduce our new CEO, a leader known for transforming workplace culture. And," the chairman added with a slight smile, "someone who has already spent time among you." Confused murmurs spread through the room. Min-seok frowned. "Among us," he whispered. Hannah shrugged. The chairman continued, "Please welcome Kang Do-hyun." The doors at the back opened. Conversations died instantly. Footsteps echoed, and in walked the man they had ignored, mocked, dismissed, and underestimated. The janitor, now wearing a CEO's suit. Gasps erupted. A few employees nearly stood in shock. Min-seok's face drained of color. Hannah froze. Jae-ho stared at his shoes. Do-hyun approached the stage calmly, bowing before the crowd. "Good morning," he said, his voice even and strong. "Some of you know me as the janitor who cleaned your floors." Silence. Eyes widened. Even the air felt heavier. "For the past 2 weeks, I have observed this company not from an office, but from the ground level. I wanted to see how people treat those they believe cannot help them or harm them. What I found," he paused, "revealed both the best and the worst of our culture." He didn't name anyone. He didn't shame specific individuals. Instead, he spoke broadly, letting guilt find the guilty. A great company is not measured by revenue alone, but by how its people treat each other. Hierarchy should never excuse cruelty, and titles should never determine dignity. Some employees lowered their heads. Others looked around nervously, unsure if they were part of the worst he mentioned. In the back row, Soo-mi watched quietly, her eyes wide, realizing the man she defended was now the company's top leader. Do-hyun continued, "Over the next months, we will rebuild. Not just systems, but culture. Respect will be our foundation." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calmness carried weight. "For those who have contributed positively, thank you. For those who haven't, this is your moment to change." The speech ended with polite applause, though some clapped more nervously than sincerely. As the room began to disperse, the trio panicked quietly among themselves. Everything they had done for 2 weeks replayed in their minds like a nightmare. After the meeting, employees returned to their tasks with buzzing whispers. Meanwhile, Do-hyun met with department heads to outline immediate corrective measures. He scheduled one-on-one conversations with staff across all levels, not relying on filtered reports. His leadership style was direct, patient, and observant. But while he focused on systemic change, 3 anxious employees struggled to concentrate on anything else. Min-seok skipped lunch. Hannah frantically rewrote her task list. Jae-ho avoided eye contact with everyone. They wondered if they would be fired immediately. But Do-hyun didn't call them. Not yet. Instead, he called Soo-mi to his office. She entered cautiously, bowing deeply. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. "No," he said gently. "You did something right." Her eyes widened. He explained that he remembered every moment she acknowledged him with kindness when she thought he was just a janitor. "People like you," he said, "are the backbone of a healthy company." Soo-mi blinked rapidly, overwhelmed. "I wasn't expecting anything," she whispered. "Exactly," he replied. "That's why it matters." He ended the meeting by offering her a new role, assistant to the CEO, with opportunities for training and advancement. She was stunned. "But I'm not used to high-level roles," she admitted. "You don't need to be used to it," he said. "You just need your heart and your work ethic. Skills we can teach." She accepted, tears welling in her eyes. For her, this wasn't a reward. It was proof that kindness still had a place in a corporate world that often praises ambition over humanity. News of her promotion spread through the office quickly, stirring mixed reactions. Some people smiled genuinely, those who admired Soo-mi's consistent humility. Others whispered skeptically, assuming she had won favor by luck. But one thing was undeniable: the company's power dynamics were shifting. The quiet workers who had been overlooked now felt seen, and the people who relied on charm alone felt suddenly exposed. Meanwhile, Do-hyun prepared for the next phase of his leadership, confronting the cultural rot directly, including the bullying trio. 2 days later, he asked the 3 of them to meet him individually. First came Min-seok, sweating despite the office air conditioning. He bowed repeatedly, trying to appear respectful. "Sir, it's an honor," he said. Do-hyun stared at him steadily. "Is it?" he asked. The simplicity of the question made Min-seok freeze. "Please sit," Do-hyun said. What followed wasn't an angry lecture. It was worse. A patient, pointed series of questions. How would you describe your treatment of colleagues? How do you think others perceive your leadership? What do you think respect looks like? Min-seok struggled to answer honestly. His usual confidence melted into excuses. "It was just jokes, sir. Everyone jokes. I didn't mean anything." Do-hyun cut him off gently. "Intent does not erase impact." He continued, "You are talented, but talent without empathy becomes toxicity." By the end of the conversation, Min-seok realized he wasn't being fired, not yet. Instead, he was being placed on a mandatory mentorship and behavioral improvement plan, with regular evaluations. It wasn't punishment, it was accountability. Next was Hannah. She entered with a trembling smile, already prepared to cry if necessary. But Do-hyun wasn't swayed by theatrics. "You have influence," he said to her. "People watch you. When you gossip, others follow. When you mock someone, Others think it's acceptable. Her smile faded. She wasn't expecting such direct truth. I don't want to be that person, she whispered. But you have been, he replied calmly. He offered her training in communication, emotional intelligence, and conflict resolution. She nodded, humbled and shaken. The final conversation was with Jae-ho, who entered stiffly, clearly bracing for the worst. Unlike the others, he didn't try to charm or deflect. Sir, he began quietly, I know I messed up. Do-hyun nodded slowly. You did, but I want to know why. What unfolded was surprising. Jae-ho explained that he had grown up in a competitive environment where appearing strong meant never siding with the weak. I didn't realize how much harm I was doing, he said. Do-hyun didn't excuse him, but he appreciated the rare honesty. By the end of the week, many employees noticed the immediate changes. Clear policies were introduced to protect lower-level workers. Anonymous reporting systems were implemented. Team-building sessions focused on empathy rather than productivity metrics. And Do-hyun himself walked the halls, not as an undercover janitor, but as a CEO who genuinely cared. Employees were initially cautious, unsure if this new environment would last. But slowly, they began to relax. Trust, once broken, was being rebuilt brick by brick. One of the most symbolic changes came during a company-wide volunteer event he organized at a community center. The entire staff arrived, executives, interns, assistants, and even the trio, who looked nervous but determined to do better. For the first time, people saw each other outside the rigid corporate hierarchy. They cooked meals, distributed supplies, cleaned storage areas, and helped elderly visitors. And in one quiet moment, Min-seok apologized directly to an elderly volunteer he had accidentally bumped into. It was small but sincere. Over the next months, the company transformed. Employee satisfaction rose. Turnover decreased. Productivity improved. But more importantly, the atmosphere changed. People greeted janitors by name. Departments collaborated instead of competing. Even the trio, once the office's biggest problem, became unexpected advocates for positive culture. Their transformation wasn't dramatic or perfect, but it was real. And people noticed. Meanwhile, Soo-mi blossomed in her new role, showing natural organizational leadership that had been overlooked for years. She worked closely with Do-hyun, helping him draft new employee engagement programs, coordinate mentorship sessions, and track cultural improvements. One evening, after a long day, she asked him a question that had been on her mind. Why did you choose to go undercover? He smiled softly. Because power hides the truth. People behave differently around a CEO. I wanted to know the real Hanguk tech, not the version people clean up for presentations. She nodded, realizing how rare such intention was. As months turned into a year, outside media began noticing Hanguk tech's transformation. Articles praised the company's unexpected comeback, and business schools requested interviews with the mysterious CEO who had once swept floors. But Do-hyun declined most publicity. This wasn't about creating a public relations miracle, he explained internally. It was about building a place where people are treated like human beings. Meanwhile, employees proudly shared stories of their improved workplace with friends and family. But success didn't mean the journey was over. A company is a living organism, always changing, always needing attention. One afternoon, a junior engineer approached Do-hyun nervously, mentioning concerns about a team leader's behavior. Instead of brushing it off, Do-hyun listened carefully, scheduled follow-ups, and ensured the situation was addressed. Moments like these sent a message. Hanguk tech wasn't reverting to old habits. No one, regardless of title, was above accountability. One of the biggest cultural breakthroughs came when employees began voluntarily reporting issues, not out of fear, but out of pride in maintaining the company's values. Even the trio, once the source of many complaints, became known for advocating on behalf of interns and temps. It wasn't performative, it was growth. And Do-hyun recognized that sometimes people act out of insecurity rather than cruelty. With guidance, they had chosen a better path. As the company stabilized, revenue increased faster than expected. Investors praised the turnaround. But when journalists asked about the secret, Do-hyun always gave the same answer: culture. Treat people right, and the results follow. It became a quiet philosophy that spread through the Korean corporate world. Some leaders scoffed, believing strict hierarchy was the only way. But Hanguk-taek stood as proof that respect, transparency, and empathy could reshape not just a workplace, but the people within it. 1 year after the undercover experiment, the board held an anniversary event to celebrate the company's revival. Employees delivered speeches, sharing stories of the changes they'd experienced. Soo-mi spoke about overcoming self-doubt. A junior designer talked about how mentorship helped her grow. Even Jae-ho stepped forward shyly and admitted how much he had learned about respect and awareness. It wasn't a perfect company, but it was a healing one. During the event, someone asked Do-hyun if he would ever consider going undercover again. He laughed lightly and replied, "Once was enough, but I'll never stop walking the floors." A CEO should never be too far from the people who keep the company alive. His words were simple, but every employee understood the deeper message. Leadership wasn't about staying in a glass office. It was about staying connected. As the crowd dispersed, Soo-mi approached him. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I didn't say anything that day?" she asked. He shook his head. "The important thing is that you did. When everyone else stayed silent, you chose compassion." She blushed lightly. "Anyone would have done the same." He smiled. "You'd be surprised how rare your courage is." Her eyes softened, realizing the impact of one small act of kindness. Meanwhile, the trio often reflected on their past actions. Their guilt didn't vanish, but they used it to fuel personal growth. Min-seok attended workshops on emotional intelligence. Hannah became a vocal advocate for anti-bullying policies. Jae-ho mentored new hires, teaching them the lessons he wished someone had taught him earlier. They couldn't change their past, but they were determined to rewrite their future. One quiet evening, as he walked through the office, Do-hyun paused in the break room, the same place where the iced coffee incident had occurred months earlier. The room was peaceful now. Clean, respectful, warm. It reminded him that transformation doesn't happen through fear or punishment. It happens when people feel safe enough to change, and when leaders are willing to listen before they judge. He looked at the janitorial staff working nearby. They greeted him cheerfully, not because he was the CEO, but because he was familiar and approachable. He joined them briefly in conversation, recalling his undercover days. They laughed at the stories he shared about struggling to operate certain cleaning machines. Moments like this grounded him. No matter how high he climbed in the business world, he never forgot where he came from. Eventually, he returned to his office overlooking the city. The lights of Seoul flickered like stars reflecting off glass towers and busy streets. He thought about his mother, who sacrificed so much so he could study. "I wish you could see this," he whispered. But he knew she would have been proud, not of his title, but of the values he carried into leadership. Values she had taught him through quiet resilience. Hanguk-taek continued to grow, gaining recognition for its employee-first culture. Universities invited employees, not just executives, to speak about their journey. The story of the undercover janitor CEO circulated widely, becoming an inspiration for workers and leaders alike. Some saw it as a lesson in humility. Others saw it as a warning. But for most, it was simply a story about the power of choices, small, daily choices that shape who we become. One day, a young intern approached him nervously. "Sir, I wanted to say thank you. This company feels different from others I've worked at." Do-hyun smiled warmly. "That's because people like you make it different. Don't underestimate your role." The intern bowed, visibly moved. Small interactions like these reminded him that leadership wasn't about one big moment. It was about thousands of quiet ones. As he prepared to leave for the day, he passed by a wall displaying photographs of employees at various volunteer events. In one photo, he saw the trio working side by side, smiling genuinely. In another, he saw Soo-mi handing out food at a community shelter. In another, he saw janitorial staff being honored for their contributions. Each photo told a story of growth, redemption, and unity. The transformation of Hanguk Tech wasn't perfect. No company ever is. There were still conflicts, mistakes, and disagreements. But there was also honesty, empathy, and willingness to improve. That, to Do-hyun, was success. Not numbers on a spreadsheet, but people choosing to rise instead of fall, choosing respect instead of ridicule, choosing integrity over convenience. He locked his office, walked through the quiet halls, and rode the elevator down to the ground floor. The security guards greeted him warmly. He thanked them, bowing respectfully, the same way he had hoped others would bow to the janitor he once pretended to be. Outside, the evening air was crisp, carrying the quiet hum of city life. He inhaled deeply, grateful for where the journey had led. Before heading to his car, he paused at the entrance and glanced back at the building. Hanguk Tech wasn't just an office tower. It was a living reminder of the power of humility. A reminder that every person, no matter their job, deserves dignity. And also a reminder that leadership is earned not through authority, but through understanding. He remembered the day employees laughed at him, the spilled coffee, the insults, the invisibility. But he remembered the kindness too, the small snacks Soo-mi left, the respectful nods from quiet workers, the silent smiles from those who saw him as a person, not a uniform. In those moments, he realized something profound. Cruelty is loud, but kindness leaves deeper echoes. When he finally walked away from the building, he didn't feel triumphant. He felt hopeful. Because this wasn't a story about exposing people for their wrongs. It was a story about helping people do right. And in a world often obsessed with quick success and hierarchy, Hanguk Tech had become a rare example of what compassion-driven leadership could achieve. And so, the story spread across South Korea. They bullied a janitor, without knowing he was the company's new CEO. But the real lesson wasn't about the twist. It was about what happened afterward. A company healed. People changed. And a leader proved that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is sweep the floors, not to clean them, but to see who notices. Thanks for watching.